I would separate out your, and I know you're saying, well, this is a single point of contact, your service desk, but in FootPrints, we now have the ability to do different items in a service management, what we call a workspace. And so I often separate those IT requests, those HR requests, such as new hires, separations, and role changes, into its own request system. And by the way, I don't give the general public access to that. I give maybe just the managers, or in a perfect world, the HR department access to that. But that keeps, maybe I have a coworker down in the next cube. I don't want him going in and putting a separation request for me anyway, just because he doesn't like me. He doesn't have the authority to do that, and so I keep him out of it, and I move those to its own request system. That way you can say each and every service request that comes into the general service desk can be for just one item. So that greatly simplifies your service request. It does one other thing. If you let the customers, if you're in a self-service situation and the customers are putting in those service requests, well, guess what? They're already categorizing those. You don't have to go back and categorize service requests. So why do duplicate information? Capture information again and again. They've already said, here's what I want to request. It's captured in the service request. Don't make the agents go back and categorize service requests. All right, that's item one. Let's go to item two. These will move a little bit faster. Item two is something we all do. It's the priorities. Well, we know, according to ITIL, that our priorities are set based upon impact and urgency, right? Well, you'd be surprised how often I go into an account and I'm looking at how they have things set up, and I see they have high, medium, and low priorities, or maybe they have critical, high, medium, low, and sometimes they even have a priority called project. So it's things that are long term. They don't want to mess up their SLAs or whatever. Well, that's great, but we have some suggestions on how to improve and simplify that. Also, I'll go into accounts and I'll see they have these priorities, and I'll say, well, what's your most used priority? They go, well, we don't really pay attention to the priorities. We kind of know what our customers want, and we don't even mess with the priorities. Believe it or not, I've been to a number of accounts that are that way. And so they're using what I call tribal knowledge. It's just because they know about it. I kind of know how fast I need to work on this. Well, that's great if you have people in your service desk or your IT shop that have been there for 5 years or longer, and they understand every single one of your customers. But in larger environments, that just doesn't scale well. And so you really do want to use your priorities. That's why you have priorities. Your priorities should help you prioritize your work. What do I do first, and why? Well, the why, it comes from the impact and urgency, and we'll talk about that in a minute. The other thing is we want to use objective terminology, okay? Now, high, medium, lows, not very objective. That's what we call subjective terms. Even critical, urgent, high, and normal can be subjective. What's normal to me may be high to you. So the way we can make these objective is to use an impact and an urgency. Impact is, we generally now state that the impact is how many people are impacted, and urgency is can work be done or not. So if we use maybe 3 impacts, so is this impacting one person, or is it impacting one department or location, or is it impacting multiple departments or locations? So I have three levels there, the highest being multiple departments or locations. I can say urgency is like, well, can they still perform work, or is there a workaround? And I can use that terminology, by the way, rather than say high, medium, and low, which are subjective terms. And everybody looks at it and they say, yes, I understand what that means. That's very objective terminology. Workaround exists. Or is workaround degraded? And degraded is a little subjective. Or is it a total work stoppage? I mean, that's crystal clear. Okay, so we've basically taken high, medium, and low subjective terms and turned them into objective terms that anybody can look at and understand. Then we use the impact and urgency to help set the priority. So now we've got objective terminology combined with consistent use, and now our priorities are going to be set properly. Now, it's not to say once the priority is set that you can't come back and change. Maybe we've got a total work stoppage situation. We've implemented a workaround, and now we can come in and change the urgency to a workaround exists, and that lowers our priority. I mentioned a minute ago that sometimes I'll come in and I'll see people have like project as a priority. Well, project's not a priority. That project is a type of a workflow. And so what I like to do is set up a separate ticketing system, and I'll call it a project management system in FootPrints, where we move projects. So if the customer, of course, we'll notify the customer we're closing this and we're taking their service request for implementing a new service desk system, and we're going, or whatever that project is, and we're going to manage that in the project management system. Same thing with enhancement requests. Somebody needs a new report or enhancement to an application. Don't leave that in your service desk for the next 6 months. Move it out to your release management system. And these other systems, where you can monitor releases and you can monitor projects are very easy to set up and create and set up in FootPrints. So get those out of your priorities. Don't have priorities for those. Okay, that was item number 2. We're going to item number 3, simplify teams. Unless you're the smallest of IT shops, you probably do have teams of IT people that work on things. You may have, your system administrators managing the server farm, and you have your database administrators and your developers and your network team and your maybe your desktop support team and so forth and so on. You'd be surprised how often I'll walk into an account and I'll find 30 or 40 teams listed. And in some cases, they don't even have 30 or 40 IT folks. It's like, how do you have more teams than you have people? They say, well, people wear multiple hats. Well, that's true, but what can we do to reduce the number of teams when you don't really need that many teams? This gets back into we're technical people, and we want to make sure every hole is filled somehow. And so we come up with teams and sub-teams and sub-teams. You really don't need to go to that level of effort, and quite honestly, that kind of granularity leads to confusion, and that leads to people assigning tickets to the wrong team, or maybe it goes to a couple teams before it gets to the right team. It's much easier to assign to teams when you have a dozen or less teams. Now, I'm not saying that the largest shops out there don't legitimately need more than a dozen teams, but I would suggest that if you can look at your teams and say, where can we reduce and combine teams, you should do it. And another way to help manage things easier with the simplification is remember that teams do change. Teams are actually part of your organization, right? And unfortunately, I see categorization set up along teams. I see that way too often. People say, well, we just follow categorization, and basically it gets assigned to that team. Or maybe their high-level categorization is the teams, okay? Well, because teams in your organization can change, please don't set up your categorizations around teams. It's okay that those categorizations may route to teams, but don't set it up to equate. All right, let's talk a little bit about teams and how they react to assignments. There's a number of ways in FootPrints that you can assign. You can assign to individuals, assign to teams. You can also assign to an individual on a team. If you assign it just to the team itself, then we have this concept that the team, somebody on the team, takes the ticket, and now that person owns the ticket. Or you could assign it to an individual or individuals on the team, and they look at it, and they do what we call a team triage, and they decide who on our team is best fit to do this, and then they reassign it. those are good ways to do it. There's also in older footprints round robin, so you can say, the last person on the team that hasn't had a ticket gets the next one. So you need to stop and think about how you do assignment of teams. But here's my point: not every team operates the same way. So you don't have to have one universal way to assign tickets to the team. You can have some teams where you assign it to the team and the team lead, and that team lead is responsible for getting it in the hands of the right person. Some teams you can assign it, and everybody on the team sees it, and they take it. And then maybe you have round robin for others. So it's not a universal one-size-fits-all. So you should really take a step back and take a look at how your teams work. Now, having said that, you should still hold all the teams to the same set of responsibility for taking tickets. I walk into a lot of accounts, and they'll say, well, this one team over here, their tickets are open for months. They don't go back and close them. We don't know where they're at. Well, I realize you have to get management involved, but you should expect all of your teams to be responsible, and so you should hold them to the same set of responsibilities. That, again, is more of a management issue, but it certainly simplifies the way you react from a service desk standpoint, knowing that all your teams will close their tickets and see those tickets and respond appropriately. One way to help that is to do reporting and measure your teams. If you're not reporting by team, then you should surely do that today. It will help. This isn't so much a simplification method as it is just good practice to let teams know where they stand, and you should measure those teams, reward teams. Matter of fact, the people on that team should work as a team, and they should be rewarded as a team rather than as individuals. If you reward certain individuals on the network team, well, guess what? The rest of the people on that team, will continue to slack off, I guess. So you should reward teams and show. Now, I'm not saying that you should not reward individuals when they do a great job. But if you expect the team to act as a team, you need to manage them and reward them as a team. All right, so that's teams. That's number 3. Let's go to number 4. Number 4, simplify and improve ticket assignments. Well, this comes down to how fast we can respond and resolve tickets, right? And we want to, as quickly as possible, assign tickets. Well, I already mentioned up front that one of the things you could do is give your customers symptoms, especially if they're doing self-service. But even if they're not doing self-service, if you can have a field with a list of symptoms, and so your call center takes the call from the customer, and they're saying, what is the symptom? And the customer's not really sure, and you read from the list of some of the usual symptoms. They go, yes, that's what I want. Well, guess what? Based upon that symptom, we can now quickly assign this to the right team. And I already mentioned the term triage, and most of you probably know that term. It's not from the medical world, but from the service desk world, where a call comes in and we look at it and we determine, how what is the nature of the issue and who should best look at it, and of course, what is the priority? How quickly does it need to be attended to? If you're doing triage rather than what I call automatic assignment or auto assignment, then there's 2 ways that that's done in practice. One is somebody chooses a field like a symptom field, and the tool, like FootPrints, helps assign this to the right team or individual. The other is the tribal knowledge. So somebody's scratching their head, listening to the customer or reading the ticket and trying to figure out, where should this go?